You want me to do roll call, Jim?
What's happening right now?
Call meeting to order by Chairman Jim Geisler, Tuesday, April 14th, 2020 at 9 a.m. or 9:01. I'm sorry. Would you call roll?
Commissioner Snyder,
Oh, I'm complaining too much.
Commissioner Snyder,
Here.
Commissioner Bone,
Here.
Glazer, Commissioner Glazer,
Steve?
He's up in
Here.
Minnesota.
thank you. Commissioner Dorian,
Here.
Commissioner Nosen. Anybody see Commissioner Nosen?
I'll text them.
No.
Thank you. Chairman Geisler.
Here. I
All right, we
think
have six.
We are
6 out of the 7. Just Nosen missing?
No, Gay.
Oh, just Gay missing.
No, Gay and Scott.
Oh, both of them. Okay. Well, it's you're on, Bridget.
Okay. All righty. So you should have gotten a copy of the report in your email yesterday. I'm just going to mute everybody. Can you guys use, so there's not a lot of feedback. Can you guys use your raise hand function if you have a question, and I'll pull you up. Okay. And Jessica, if you can pay attention to the raise hands, that way I don't, in case I miss somebody. Okay. You've probably noticed the theme through this report is COVID, 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 COVID. And it's really a testimony to how much this team and this organization has really pulled together in the last month. You know, Kevin's crew has been doing daytime cleaning. It's really made a huge difference to have a facilities person in here and be visible, particularly for those of us who are in the building in the middle of the day. And it has certainly made it easier, or, you know, for us to feel less concerned about, you know, potential exposure while we're in the building. There's been extra cleaning. His crew has been doing extra cleaning at all of the facilities. One thing that Kevin has been doing that he picked up for us to help with public information is basically monitoring and posting to our Twitter page. So when Brian Nichols was here, he created a Twitter page, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and then it just got left. Nobody did anything with it. And in the middle of this crisis, we wanted to be making sure that we could, and he uses Twitter regularly, so we wanted to make sure that we were able to access as many outlets for information as possible. So really have appreciated him taking up that charge. So if you're on Twitter, you can follow Midland County's page. Just look for our logo. At the jail, we have a significantly reduced number of inmates. We're down to 138. Our federal marshal number should pretty much remain constant. According to the sheriff and my phone calls with him, you know, the marshals don't have any place for these inmates, and they're not moving people, which is probably best for everybody, right? So he's managed to work with the judges to release as many people that are local inmates as possible, and they're not keeping people in the jail if they don't have to. They're not arresting and bringing to the jail people unless it's drunk driving or domestic violence, or, you know, preventing someone from hurting themselves. So I think that has been good for trying to limit the amount of exposure that we've had, and also helps with social distancing because he doesn't need to have quite as many staff members on out at the jail when you have such a reduction in our inmate population. Pinecrest, We have about 54 as far as census goes. They've been, their activities director is trying to find things for the residents to do, which I appreciate during this time that do allow for social distancing. They're not allowing visits from anybody unless it's, unless our staff has to be out there, whether it's an IT person or a facilities person to help with stuff out at the facility. Community corrections, a lot going on. Marissa and community corrections is not considered an essential service, though she works so much with the courts, which are, she's pretty much been in every day. She's relocated. They kicked her out of the jail for the most part, where her office is most of the time. Her community service office is in this building on the second floor by facilities. So that's where she's been working out of. So I appreciate the fact that IT's been able to set up her and Becky, our pretrial person. I did have Marissa and Lance Dexter talk to the state court administrator's office and the community corrections group down in Lansing to make sure that the folks that are paid by grants are still going to be getting paid by grants. Even if they are not working as many hours. So Becky, who is our pretrial person, is still doing work when she has work, when Marissa has work for her to do, or the courts have work for her to do, and she's getting paid for those hours. It's less than what her budgeted FTE is because we haven't had as much activity. But things like drug court and My Hope are still going on. They're meeting by Zoom. I'm gonna pause right there and unmute Gay and Scott. Ann, do you wanna, and you, do you wanna finish calling roll? And you might have to unmute yourself. There you go.
I see that Gay and Scott are here. I'll just add them to the roll call.
Okay, all right, good. So I'm gonna mute you all again. Gay and Scott, for the record, just so that there's less feedback on the call, I've muted everybody, and if you could use the raise your hand function if you have a question. Jessica's going to keep monitoring that for me in case I miss it, so that, and if she sees that you have a question, she can lower your hand on the screen and then unmute you so that you can talk. Moving on to equalization. Again, equalization isn't considered an essential function in our continuity of operations plan, but clearly it is essential to what we do moving forward. The state has been actively trying to seek information from counties about what we're doing with equalization. The governor had put out a little bit of guidance, but not a lot. It's one of the reasons why we really need to have a board meeting next week so that we can approve the equalization request that Mary has put forth so that we can levy taxes in the general operating tax in July. Let's see. Emergency management, I'm gonna just say basically Jennifer has been doing nothing but COVID-19. She's had a couple days where she's been able to get caught up on her regular stuff, but really appreciate the fact that because we do not have a communications person here at the county, all of our public information positions have always been volunteer. So when I was finance director, I volunteered for Roger as PIO. Jerry Cole did when he was the trial court administrator. So we had 2 deep at least, which is enough when we have just an incident that's pretty specific to the city. For example, flooding, if it's localized or if there's a chemical release in town. With the support of Dow for things like chemical releases, that's enough people. But when we have instances where we're operating the EOC 24/7, it really does prove to be challenging if we don't have at least 2 deep. And Tori had volunteered before as PIO, and she's no longer here. So that left me. And Roger had made it clear when I moved into the administrative controller's role, he did not want me to act as PIO because I had other responsibilities in the role of administrator. That being said, I'm going to be there to fill in when someone needs me, regardless of what my other responsibilities are, because you can't expect one person to do it for 24 hours or even 12 hours. You know, we need to be able to rotate people in and out. So Jennifer has been working. She basically volunteered to be the PIO for the health department because the person who would normally help with PIO is Nicole. And because this is a pandemic and that is her role as the nurse practitioner in charge of, and that's her assignment all the time, is pandemic related issues. When she's not being a nurse practitioner, she just didn't have the time, the discretionary time to do it. So I really appreciate Jen stepping in. I've been helping her with public information. We've actually tried to utilize Digital Mitten for sharing a lot of stuff that our joint public information group, which is virtual. We have a large group of folks on a group text that we are sharing information, and group email where we are sharing public information. We have, you know, all of the appropriate players involved, CMH, the hospital, Dow, the city, us, 211. There are more, I'm not going to remember them all. So I think that we've done a really good job of pushing stuff out on the social media. And I know that the health department would not have the capacity to do what we are doing with public information if Jennifer hadn't stepped up to help. So I appreciate that. Finance, budget, administration, the audit started already virtually. New experience for everybody, including our new finance director, who's still trying to feel comfortable in his role. So he's been on both sides of this audit now. And I would say this is new territory for everybody, including the auditors who are trying to do things virtually from their homes. Mike did have a Zoom call yesterday with the auditors and the finance team just to have an introduction. I'm going to unmute you, Mike. Do you have anything, or you'll have to unmute yourself. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, other than, so we actually started last week. I think under the circumstances, it's going, I mean, fairly well. Like I said, it's really uncharted territory for them as well as for us. But I feel, I mean, fortunate we have the support of, you know, IT to get our IT department to get the auditors in remotely, and we're still pretty much on schedule, which is good. So yeah, that's about it right now.
Okay, awesome. All righty. One of the things that I did put under finance and administration is that I have been having daily calls with my immediate crisis response team, which includes my internal service staff here who would be supporting those other folks who are not working in the office and maybe working remotely, Matt and Mark. So that includes Jennifer, Fred, IT, the court. So Lance has been on the calls, and HR. I don't think I missed anybody. Jen, Fred, yeah, I think that's it. And then Mark's been on those calls. So I think those have been helpful in us sharing information and trying to make sure that we're addressing things that are headed our way. You know, can't say enough about my team and how they have stepped up to help everybody, and really the entire organization as a whole. All the offices have been, for the most part, cooperative and collaborating with each other and pretty understanding. One thing I want to know is that if you are getting questions or comments or concerns from some of the offices, maybe an elected office, that they are unhappy with the fact that they were not listed as an essential service or an essential office, it's not because they're not considered important. You have to try to remember the purpose of the continuity of operations plan, and that is, if we had a crisis where we didn't have enough people to staff departments, we had to close the building, there was a natural disaster, you know, who do we have to still call in to work to help those first responders function? And, you know, I love Ann and think she does a great job, but the clerk's office doesn't need to be open to help first responders function, right? Neither really does the treasurer's office, with the exception of the treasurer's office would have to help us process payroll and the finance department make payments. So I appreciate everybody who's coming in who's not considered to be in that list of essential departments based on the continuity of operation plan. But that plan was developed a while back, and Jennifer and I have already chatted about some things that we need to do to bring it up to date and make changes to it. So that doesn't mean we're going to add every department in. That sort of defeats the purpose. So does anyone have questions about that? Okay. Moving on, GIS. We did get the county remonumentation plan submitted, and we returned it with some edits and updates. So once we get that back from the state, I know we were talking about having the guy from the state come up and talk this month. That's not going to happen. So maybe in May, we can make that happen. Health department, I'm not sure what else I can say about back on GIS. Scott Nosen, I just want you to be, I hope you're still there since I can't see your face. Maybe I'll wait until he comes back on just to make sure he's there. Okay, moving on to there you are. Scott and I had talked about submitting a couple different projects to NACO for their annual awards program. One of the things we were going to submit was our SROs and how the process by which we use to fund the school resource officers. Sean Hale from Bullet Creek was going to help me with that, and then the wheels fell off the buggy with COVID-19, and we couldn't get to any more details and us getting together to talk about it. But we did have a project that I wanted to have submitted for the last year or so, and that is the project that Chris worked on with Ross and veterans a few years back about using GIS to map all of the veterans' graves in Midland County. So every cemetery in Midland County that has a veteran's grave has been mapped and is in GIS so that when family members are looking for them, they can find them. And as new graves, as folks pass away, those grave sites are added into that layer in GIS. So Nathan Fazer, who is our GIS coordinator now, spent a lot of time drafting the submission, and NACO had extended the deadline, I guess, to yesterday because of all this stuff happening with COVID-19. And Chris got it submitted yesterday. So we will have one, submission in the hopper this year, and then we'll put off the SRO submission until next year. Health department, again, I don't know what else I can say. The staff in the health department has just been doing a yeoman's job. I am so proud of all of the things that they are doing and the way they are pulling together, and not without one single complaint. Scott Nosen.
Yeah, did you unmute me?
Yep, you're good. Yep.
Yeah, so just on the COVID virus thing, we had this discussion a little bit, and I had it with Fred as well. The issue of number of recoveries.
Right.
I know I think we're at 38 now that have tested positive. We still only have one death, but I'm pretty. I think it's important that we really publicize when it happens, when people are considered recovered. And I realize that that's there are a lot of criteria, the least of which it's got to be at least 30 days
right
past when you got it. But I think it's important that this be communicated, not just to us, but to everybody, to the newspaper, et cetera. And I don't know who manages that. And I don't know how the data flows up to the totals because, I can see you go to Worldometer, and you can see the total recoveries
Mhm.
for US and others. So I just want to know if that's possible and we can make that happen.
Well, I can tell you that, well, first off, we're not at 38, we're at 33.
Okay.
We're at 33 and we've had one death. And it does take 30 days before someone has to be recovered a full 30 days, non-symptomatic for at least 30 days before they're considered recovered. So it's going to be a while before we have someone who meets that criteria.
It seems to me that we've got folks that have been on the list for more than a month, don't we?
Not past, not 30 days past when their symptoms ended.
Oh, when their symptoms ended.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and how Fred shares that information, I'm not sure how he's going to do that. You know, again, it's going to be a little bit, but he is actually sending information to Lori Qualls at the newspaper almost every day. So that whether it's a soundbite here or there, just so that she has some things that, you know, we can talk about, or that the newspaper can talk about, and we can respond to if people have questions.
Well, maybe just to prime the pump here, he could, at his next communication with Lori, he could explain the recovery process and why we don't have that data yet and when it will be coming, just to keep people informed.
Yeah, okay. All right. Steve, you're next. You had your hand raised, and then I think Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the remonumentation project. You mentioned that the veterans' graves are mapped. How would a family member make that contact to locate if they're out of town? And
well, if they call Ross, he can help them with that. But otherwise, if they actually do any sort of searching, they'll land on our website, and it's in our GIS active mapping is on our webpage. So you just have to go into the map and then basically in the search bar say what you're looking for.
Oh, all right. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to experiment with that. That sounds very interesting. So thank you.
Yeah. And, you know, I'll tell you that when it got publicized, and I can't remember if it was in the newspaper or not, but Harvard puts out this newsletter called Harvard Insights, and it actually made the Harvard Insights newsletter because it was, to me, it's a pretty impressive and a pretty moving project too.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. Mark?
I have nothing now. I just wanted to clarify on that 33 and not 38.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. All right. Moving on to human resources. I did have Suzanne work pretty closely with Family and Children's Services to get something out on our EAP. You know, we really have we're really blessed to have Dr. Bodner as our health director, the doctor in our health department, because of her experiences managing health at Dow Chemical. You know, she was also in charge of the EAP program at Dow Chemical for the employees. And she's been communicating with me about whether or not, you know, there was something that we could send out and advertise to employees a little bit more about the program. Not that they may need it right now, but just reminding them that it's available, because people are, you know, do experience some changes in mental health when they're cooped up for a month and they can't get out, or they may know someone who's sick, or they may be feeling not well themselves. So we push that out to employees. And again, on our countywide managers call, I continue to remind managers and elected officials to encourage their employees to check their emails by just logging into our webpage and then down to webmail. The other thing I want to talk about under human resources is depending on, and I've mentioned this a couple times on calls, depending on how this whole thing plays out and how long it lasts, we may be finding ourselves in a position of needing to furlough people. So furlough means a reduction in hours. And if we have employees who are at home and not able to work from home, then we may need to put them on furlough. Now that means we will continue their health insurance and they can apply for unemployment. I don't know when we're going to have to make that decision. I've kind of got that process started relative to having Jim Green draft a couple letters that we could send out. We need to communicate that with the unions when we do it also. The other thing is depending on how this goes, if we don't extend past April 30th, I've talked with Jennifer a little bit and Fred about slowly bringing people back instead of automatically having everybody back in here on April or May 1st. So maybe bringing the people who are working from home in essential departments back into the building the following week, still closed to the public, and then the week after, bring everybody else back. So still trying to do a little bit of social distancing. And the reason for that is, I don't know if any of you saw the press conference yesterday from the governor in the afternoon, but they're using, at the state level, they're using at least 4 different modeling algorithms to try and estimate when the apex is going to be of this for the state of Michigan. And it looks like it could extend out into about the second week of May. So for her to keep everybody home until the second week of May is going to require more legislative action because her authority expires for that on May 30 or April 30th. So it's sort of a wait and see. And it's, you know, I have this internal conflict, right? Like on one hand, I have Suzanne working to try and figure out how we may furlough people if we need to. And then I have this, on the other hand, I'm, you know, talking through the potential of how we ramp back up slowly instead of just, you know, Katie bar the doors, everybody's coming back on Friday, May 1st. So I guess, you know, hopefully the way you guys read that is that we're doing some pre-planning for both options. And I think that that's good. I will tell you that yesterday, the city announced that they are furloughing about 130 employees starting this week. They are spending about $80,000 a week in wages for non-essential employees who are sitting at home not working. So they're gonna, I mean, those folks can apply for unemployment. And in some cases, a good majority of those folks, I don't know if they're part-time or their wages are just a little bit lower, they may make more money on unemployment. And of course, they're gonna, with furlough, you continue their health benefits. So those employees won't lose their health benefits. But we actually, I think, don't have as many people, with the exception of part-timers, who would make more money on unemployment than they would with us paying them to sit at home. And right now we've committed to continuing to do that through April 30th. So Scott, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I'm sort of curious, what would you like this board to do in terms of giving you guidance or criteria about when you pull the trigger on that? And because I think that's a pretty damn important decision, and I don't even know what the criteria are.
Well, for us, it's really about how to, when I'm looking at, and I've had, you know, Mike kind of looking at revenue streams, how long do we keep paying people to sit home and not work when we're not bringing in as much revenue? Okay, so I really need to be looking at it from a budgetary standpoint also. And I'm not sure that, you know, I may have to have, you know, a special meeting of the board to, in the last week in April, to say, look, we're going to start furloughing people. Will you bless this? I mean, I
wonder if we can't deal with some of this maybe later this afternoon in the finance committee and just talk about, you know, what are the criteria on budget? Because if it's truly budget related, I want to know, you know, like you said, we're looking at revenue streams, what are the differences? I'd kind of like to get a little bit more of that information. And
Sure. Well, it's basically trending right now, Scott. I mean, because we don't have how long is this going to go, right? And I'm not really exactly sure that we're going to have as many people not working as the city does.
right,
Yeah.
just pulling the furlough trigger is an important step.
Yep.
And I just want to make sure we're all in agreement that the criteria we're all, kind of got the same thoughts in mind in terms of what causes that to be pulled.
Right. Right. Yeah, we can talk about that at finance.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Were there any other questions about that? Okay. Okay. IT cannot say enough about the internal service departments. Finance has made sure bills are paid and payroll has been done. Though we have had a few issues with retirees who actually get paper checks, who I think are now convinced that direct deposit might be a better option because the mail has been so slow that they have not gotten their pension checks yet. There's not a lot of them, less than 10, I believe, get paper checks. But Mike and Dawn have been working with those people to see if they're willing to switch over to direct deposit so this kind of stuff doesn't happen in the future. Certainly hoping that some of them move in that direction so we can avoid this kind of stuff in the future. Right now, we've got at least 1 or 2 stop payments being made on pension checks because we have retirees who said, yeah, I don't want to wait. And here's my direct deposit information. So Mike was kind enough to even handhold one of our more elderly retirees when she called and she didn't know where to find her routing number or her checking account number. So thank you for doing that, Mike. But yes, IT has done just an outstanding job rolling out equipment so people can work remotely, helping them through technical issues and making sure that they have the equipment that they need. There are still instances where people just have to come in to do some of their work, and we know that. Mosquito control, we are going to hire, we've actually started, I want to say, how many people? 5, 6, 7, about 7 or 8 technicians for mosquito control. I had Carl and Fred on a discussion about whether or not mosquito control would be considered essential, and in some cases it may not. However, we currently have a public health crisis, and we don't want to make public health crisis any worse with disease that is transmitted through mosquitoes. So one of the concerns we originally had was training for new seasonals, because it's a really, it's closed quarters. We didn't think that we would be able to acknowledge or recognize and observe social distancing, but we have about these 7 or 8 employees who are returning employees. They've already been trained. They don't need trained again. If you've read the section of my report from Carl, he's outlined how they're going to be managing social distancing and what they're going to be doing in the community. In the event that two or more technicians have to be at a specific site at the same time, someone will drive the mosquito control truck and the other employees will be asked to take their personal vehicles, and we will reimburse them mileage to avoid having more than one person in a vehicle. So, and the aerial spraying is on track to start as it should be. MSU Extension, so had some conversations with Mark Rankin about the fact that, and I'm just telling you this so that you can be aware of the potential for the future. Michigan State University has canceled all face-to-face interaction with students and projects and any sort of activity that could involve face-to-face with folks involved with MSU Extension until September 1st. That includes 4-H and no showing at the fairs unless they happen after September 1st. That is a really big deal to Midland County. We have, I want to say, about 900 youth that participate in 4-H and participate in some way, showing things at the Midland County Fair, whether it's livestock or gardens or crafts or photos or woodworking. So they're working on some way of trying to allow kids to show potentially virtually some things. I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't have any more details at this time. It means no overnight camp at Camp Niati in June. There are a lot of things that, just like a lot of seniors aren't participating in their senior year activities like prom or their varsity year of sports, a lot of these kids, it could be their last year to participate in 4-H and they may not be able to do that again. So they're going to be missing out. So, you know, these are things they're going to remember for a very long time. Trying to make things as mainstream as possible, I think, you know, and reassure them as much as possible and offer other opportunities as much as we can, I think is helpful. You know, they're just as nervous about certain things as a lot of adults are, because uncertainty makes people, you know, concerned. So if I get it, once I have more information on that, I will let you know. I don't know what that means for the fair. I haven't had any conversations with the fair. They haven't reached out to me. I can tell you that my personal opinion is that the Midland County Fair is not going to make nearly as much money, even if all of this is gone by the wayside and people can gather in places in August, if 4-H clubs and 4-H youth are not participating. Because the people who stay out there and camp out there are out there because they have animals out there, mostly. And if the kids can't show livestock, there's no reason to camp out there. If kids aren't participating in clubs in other ways, there's no reason to buy 2 and 3, you know, weekly parking passes. I just think that there's, you know, it's going to have an impact on this year's fair. Moving on to Parks and Rec. So we are sort of in a holding pattern with hiring seasonals for Parks and Rec. You know, John and I talked. Parks isn't maybe considered essential. I brought this up on one of our calls, our countywide manager calls previously, though, that we are keeping parks open. We're not hiring seasonals at this moment, but our staff that we have are monitoring the parks. They're opening them in the morning and closing them at night, and monitoring for things like down trees or power lines. I don't know about any of you, but I had half of a tree come down in my driveway yesterday with the wind that we had. And the main reason for that, obviously, is liability, right? Because people are going to use our parks. That's what the governor is encouraging everybody to do, is get outside, walk the trails, find outdoor activities where you can still properly socially distance. And so we didn't want to limit that. And even if we don't open them, people are going to use them anyway. So we need to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to prevent, you know, potential liability issues. His team's been good about that. He and Patrick, his manager, are going to have a conference call, I believe, tomorrow with Suzanne and Brenda about how we gear up, making an assumption that the world's going to open back up in Michigan on May 1st. Okay. We need to make sure that we have some seasonal park staff ready to go. So a lot of things we are going to have to do remotely with them, and getting some paperwork and setting up physicals. But I don't want to miss out on hiring some of these seasonals, because when the world opens back up, people are going to have jobs to fill. And, you know, we have a hard enough time filling these seasonal positions. So are there questions about that or concerns? As we learn more, we'll let you know. Okay. Moving on. Public Guardian Services, we do have one of our wards who was diagnosed with COVID. That person resided in one of the nursing home facilities here in the community. As far as I know, the person is in the hospital. I don't know. I'm assuming they're recovering okay. I haven't heard anything else from Steve on that. Because the courts have been operating only pretty much, new things have been happening only by mail, and the mail has been lagging. Steve has not gotten many new cases. I expect that, again, when we get back to business as usual, he's going to see quite a few more. And again, just to, highlight how fortunate we are here in Midland County. When Jennifer's been working, she actually applied for a grant from the Community Foundation for $10,000 in the event that we had to find housing or someplace for someone who was homeless and tested positive to stay. One of the issues in the southeastern Michigan southeastern Michigan area is that they have a lot of homeless cities, tent cities, and these folks just do not have access to healthcare, clean environments, hand washing, and certainly it's difficult for them to socially distance. So we need to make sure that although we don't have a large population of homeless people, in the event we did have someone who tested positive, we need to have the ability to potentially pay for them to stay somewhere. Jen was working with Saginaw County because they have a facility at the moment to see if we could possibly have an agreement with them where we reimburse them for shelter and meals. I haven't heard back on yet where that stands, and at the moment we haven't needed to worry about it. But it is something that, I think about the people who are wards of our public guardian who, for lack of having Steve look out for their best interests, might find themselves in those situations. So we're really very fortunate here in Midland County to have that service available to people. Trial court, Lance has become an expert on Zoom. The state court administrator's office is required now that we have, I think, live stream all the court proceedings. And so the IT staff has been working with the court staff. Every court had to have its own YouTube channel set up. And it's being live streamed just like the live stream process. Fortunately, that came right before we decided we needed to do this. So we stole the process from them. And Jessica's been a really fast learner on that. So she's making sure everything gets handled appropriately on our end. So I'm grateful for her and Chris for managing that. Veteran services, Ross has been doing what he can from home. He's been trying to come in a couple times a week or on the weekend when there's less people here. He's really had a lot of phone calls. As you can imagine, a lot of veterans are worried and nervous with all of the stuff happening, and they aren't, maybe the older folks are not leaving their homes unless they absolutely have to. So he's been assisting them. He's worked with the clerk's office and IT to try and get access to some information like death certificates for veterans, and thank you for working with them on that. So that he doesn't have to bother them, the clerk's office, he can do it himself and help out. The one thing that you may have already anticipated before you got this report is that the Memorial Day parade in Sanford Day in Midland and Sanford are canceled. Although unfortunate, it is certainly the right thing to do. And as only Ross could put it, the fallen wouldn't have wanted it any other way. So with that, I think I'm good unless somebody has questions. I could have listed out under meetings every single Zoom meeting I've been on related to COVID, but I would have taken up a whole other page and I thought it wasn't necessary. So I kind of lumped it all into every day I'm on Zoom for some reason or another with us. So Jim, I'm gonna unmute you. You're on.
Okay,
I got it.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Bill, you're on.
muted. There, I'm
I
unmuted.
unmuted you. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The COVID situation has also impacted everything that we do. However, there are certain things that continue, and not the least of which is our continual request under FOIA for information, primarily from the sheriff's office and through the prosecutor's office. There were 23 requests last month, and they continue. Also continuing with those requests are requests for the body cameras and videotapes, which we've been working with Mike on, and Denise trying to secure a simpler way to redact the information before we send it out. So that's an ongoing process, and I appreciate all their help because it's a pain. Needless to say, you know what I mean. In addition to the FOIAs and the software and hardware necessary to do the continued redaction, been involved with some normal things. With the confidentiality agreement with the Fair Board, I think is coming to the board the next week. We've been involved with the aerial larva sighting agreement. I think I reported that last time. That's now finalized, and mosquito control is going on. We do have an appeal from a denial of a FOIA request, and I'm going to be reviewing that with the prosecutor's office, who recommended the denial, to see if we can release it. That has to be taken up, Jessica, at the next board meeting. And so the board will be asked to consider that. I'll have a recommendation for you on that. Just as soon as I can get through to JD and get that reviewed. Don't think we have, well, we did have an issue with Pinecrest, a slight issue. It appears that the tenant did not pay all the taxes when they were timely due. I made communication with him, and he assured me that they were to be paid, and Denise was following up. She has not contacted me, so I believe they have been paid. And we have recently received an amended, this is under Four Lakes Task Force. We have recently received an amended corporate articles and bylaws and some governance instruction from them. I'm waiting to get a reaction from the Four Lakes Council to release them to the entire board. I believe Jeanette may already have them. But if not, they'll be released as soon as possible and available for you to discuss, probably at the next executive session if you wish. Been involved a little bit the last few days with the health department, and particularly yesterday when there was a test going on. I was on a conference call with Fred and others in the region concerning an issue that's outstanding, and hopefully we don't have to be involved with that. And there's been one prior one regarding potential quarantine that I've also been involved with Fred on. So that's about it from my end. Life goes on. It's different for sure, but we have to continue certain aspects of government regardless. So.
Awesome. Hey, I had one more thing to, well, two things. I sent a little note in the chat that I forgot to mention that Bay County is going to be one of the locations for drive-through testing that the governor has set up. I emailed all of you information about that because you can't just go over there and expect to be tested for COVID-19. There are requirements. You actually have to have some sort of lab order from your doctor or healthcare provider. And if you are unsure about your symptoms or not sure about exposure, there's a number to call on the flyer before you actually go over there. But I emailed that to everybody. The second thing that I forgot to mention is that Bill and Mike may be busy in the next couple weeks running estimates for millage requests, because the other thing that we need to have done is the ballot language approved for all of the millages that may be on the August primary. And if you remember me discussing this when we were actually face-to-face in an executive committee meeting, I suggested that all of the ballot questions go on in August, and with the option of your committee report saying that you approve the language to be in on an August and or November ballot. Particularly with everything that's going on right now, I think it's probably a good idea to make sure we have, who knew that we were going to be in this situation when I suggested it, but I think probably more than ever, that makes good sense this year. So those would have to be approved to meet the deadline of, I think it's May 14th to get to Ann. They'd have to be approved at your first board meeting in May. So I will reach out to all those organizations and make sure that they're ready to send their requests to you or to finance on April 28th. Okay. Jeanette, you had a question?
Commissioner Schneider.
Yes, thank you. And let me know if this is an appropriate time to discuss it or not, but I had saw Bill's report and I had saw Bridget's report about Pinecrest and taxes, and I'm not familiar with the Pinecrest and the taxes. So if it's appropriate to fill me in here, I would appreciate.
I'd be happy to take a run at that first. So Pinecrest is about 300 acres. It's a large parcel, and we farm a great portion of it. It is more than 70%, I think. The farmer who has leased the property from us grows cash crops, and therefore, because it is a for-profit making operation, it is taxable. So that portion of Pinecrest that grows crops is a taxable property. And according to our agreement with the farmer, he is responsible to pay the taxes. So that's what we were talking about.
Okay, and he hasn't yet?
Well, I think he has now. Yeah, I'd make contact with him. He's been with us for years and never had a problem.
Right, I know the family well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay.
Mark has,
Commissioner updates.
Mark has a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, question for Ann, actually. Can you update us on anybody else throw their name in the hat for commissioners or any other competition for anybody, Ann?
So far I have no additional filings for county commissioners other than all of you who have filed. I do have a meeting with a gentleman today who wants to turn in paperwork for a drain commissioner, a Cal Wentworth. And I received a question from another individual. I can't tell you her name, Mark. It's Jenny something, who also wants to put her name in the hat for drain commissioner. But outside of that, nothing. I did issue a press release yesterday to Mitchell explaining how if anyone has any paperwork they need to file, they can contact me. I will set up appointments, because the problem is getting people's signatures notarized. All the forms have to have a notary, and most notaries in town are not doing any business. So they're making appointments with me. I'm meeting with them, notarizing their signatures. Same goes with your precinct delegate forms. Those aren't due till May 5th, but all other filings, obviously, we all know are due April 21st.
Hey, Annie.
Yes.
I thought I just read one of the governor's executive orders was allowing virtual notarization of things.
Yes, and you can do that. I just, because I'm still meeting with the public, because I still have people who want to get divorced. I still have people who want to get married. I'm just meeting with the individuals. They have an appointment with me. So basically you have options, but I just put a press release out saying if anyone, is having issues, they can certainly contact me. Obviously, countywide electeds or any countywide offices have to come to me because they have to fill out the paperwork with me. So that should be hopefully in the paper today. And then the same goes for the townships. If anyone knows anyone who's running for township office, they need to contact their township clerk because that's where all those documents need to be filed.
Okay.
Thanks for the update.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're ready for commissioners' updates on boards and commissions. Commissioner Nosen?
Hey, I just had one meeting, and that was the environmental subcommittee of the MAC. And we basically went over the new platforms for this year. This is a process we go through at this time of the year all the time. No big changes. I think we've done a pretty good job of getting the platforms down pretty well. The only other comment I would make, it's actually about a future meeting, but the MAC board, which I sit on now, is going to meet virtually next week. You will recall probably that we were going to have that board meeting along with the legislative conference, which has been canceled. And you'll see in your emails, you should have an invitation to join some of the virtual meetings for that, which I would encourage you, if there's something that's of interest, to go ahead and do that. The point I was going to make, though, on the board is we will be joined by Governor Whitmer next week. And if any of you have any burning questions that you would love to just get a direct from the horse's mouth from Governor Whitmer, if you could just forward those to me, and I will kind of quarterback those and get it to Steve Curry, who is going to do the same thing for all of the counties. I suspect there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of duplicates, but if you've got questions, let me know. That's it.
Thank you, Scott. Commissioner Snyder?
Hi, thank you. So the Four Lakes, I've had 2 meetings via Zoom, and those have went well. There are some things going on, so look towards your email for some communications. On the 16th, they are still pressing forward with their quarterly meeting, and they're going to do that via Zoom and invited the public to it. I think Jessica probably has all that information. So I'll be on as what they call a panelist, so I'll be able to speak, but I primarily listen. They are doing a good job for what they have to deal with, but there is some new hurdles. So you just might want to listen in if you want to see what's going on and then read your emails. I didn't go to the last road commission meeting, but I plan to go to the one tomorrow. So most of my meetings have been canceled. I haven't been going to my townships. In fact, I've been going out very limited. So, but my phone is always open. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Bone? Are you still up there, Mark?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. I don't really have anything besides been on a lot of Zoom meetings and phone calls for the COVID-19, but you guys are up to date on that. We yesterday it was good. We didn't have one more case. We stayed at 33 for Sunday and Monday. So hopefully that continues. And that's really all I have to report.
Thank you. Commissioner Terwilliger?
No, you skipped Glazer.
Oh, I did. Sorry. Steve?
Yeah. You try. All I had
didn't succeed.
Was community mental health. We had a virtual meeting on Tuesday, the 31st of March, and that went well. So that's it. I think just like Jeanette said, I have not been going to the township meetings. I'm not even sure that they're meeting. And so we're pressing on.
Okay. Commissioner Terwilliger?
Hi, y'all. Good morning. So good to see everyone. With regard to the meetings that I'm participating in, they're just starting to ramp up. I appreciate Jessica helping with some of the Zoom challenges that I had. I don't know if anybody else had any challenges, but we're good. And the one meeting that we've had, Mark has sat in on them, Bridget is sitting in on this meeting, is with regard to Pinecrest and addressing personal protective equipment. And there is a bit of conversation within community board members on that. And so we will be meeting again today, just following this meeting. We'll keep you posted on that. And with regard to townships, as Jeanette said, if they're meeting, it's just, I don't even know if they're going inside the building. They might be meeting outside. They approve the bills and then they leave. So there's not a lot going on, but the meetings are starting to ramp up and Zoom is working. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorian?
Nothing for me.
Nothing from Commissioner Dorian. The only meeting I had was with Chris and Jessica yesterday and be introduced to Zoom. And so I'm just zooming along. Commissioner comments? Commissioner Nelson? Are you still there, Commissioner Nelson? You're muted or unmuted?
I don't have any comments.
Okay, I'm in. Commissioner Snyder?
I just want to say once again how thankful I am to the county employees and the team that we have. It's been pretty much business as usual. And I know it hasn't, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that very many people have seen a disrupt in service. And I know that some of our employees have went above and beyond and been working tireless hours. And I just want to say how thankful I am to them.
Thank you. Commissioner Bloom?
Stay healthy, everybody.
Commissioner Glacier?
Yep, reinforce what Jeanette said. Thanks to all for the yeoman's work. We're in uncharted territory. So thanks to all.
Commissioner Terwilliger?
I would ditto those remarks as well. And Scott, could you please provide the date that you want input to our governor? What day is that? Thank you.
Will do.
Commissioner Dorian? No comment. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Dorian has recommended adjournment. You get a second?
Second.
Support.
All in favor?
All right.
Motion to adjourn. Meeting is adjourned until Tuesday, April 21st, 2020 at 9 a.m. to meet the regular session of the Board of Commissioners and for the committees to resume their duties.
Everybody have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.